So welcome to another preview video from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
Today we're taking a look at a game called Triumph from PHALANX. There are a bunch of designers on this game, and I will hold the box up and you can read the names because I will not do these gentlemen a disservice by trying to butcher them.
Yeah.
But PHALANX were very gracious enough to send us a preview copy of this. You'll be able to back this on Kickstarter. Okay, I wanted to make sure we get the right one, which is probably where you're watching this video. Yeah. So wanted to kind of talk through the game. We played a 4-player game of this, so that is what our thoughts will be over.
It does up to 5.
Yes.
So we did a 4-player. And I'm going to be honest, having a 5th player, it would really change the dynamics because it's going to make these competitions more tight.
Even more tough.
And also it's going to require a little more working together because there's not as many options on the combat side of the board, keeping back the barbarian hordes. So there would be significant differences, for sure.
Yes. So this is a game where it's a multiplayer game and you are a family within the Roman Empire vying for control and trying to gain prestige. Prestige is victory points, and you will win if you have the most prestige at the end of the game.
Yep.
You will gain prestige through a number of different ways, but it is a dudes on the map area control game. A lot of your points are going to come from that. Then there's some separate tracks for kind of gaining favor through sponsoring games or by successfully defeating barbarian leaders.
Yeah. One of many barbarian leaders.
Yes, so it
not
is...
Not named. They are named, but I'm not sure if they're all in history. I'm just not... Some of them definitely
I would imagine they would be,
yeah,
because why not? Right?
Sure.
But
yeah, Hamilcar Barca right there, so...
But it's a game where...
Vercingetorix.
One of you will win at the end if you collectively survive the barbarian onslaughts. If the barbarians take Rome, you all lose together because you were miserable and did not protect the empire.
And in that respect, it is definitely semi-cooperative.
Yes.
But there's also, on top of that, and I already mentioned it, fighting the barbarian hordes really requires a lot of... because you do not have the individual resources, typically, to be able to take them on. Yeah, if you have a nice little card, maybe, or if you've taken...
If it's the weakest of the leaders,
right,
and you got some
maybe.
stuff, maybe you could do it on your own, but a lot of the time you will be working together.
Yeah.
And if you don't deal with them, more and more come, and you will get overwhelmed if you do not stay on top of it, and you will lose.
And they start very close to Rome, so it's one of those things that, I know our first turn, we had to jump on them quickly.
Yes.
Or we would have been...
Yeah, it really forces you to address that. You can't put it off, right? And you have to fight your way kind of through the barbarians and their armies. That then opens up more of the map to you to have Roman control, so you can gain more prestige.
Yeah.
Because it opens it up, and you can gain taxes and stuff like that.
It was very interesting. All of the Roman provinces that start under your control only give 2 victory points to the person that has the most influence there, and 1 victory point to the second person, whereas some of these others, 4, 2, and 1, Britannia's 5, 3, and 2, and there's a huge incentive to get out, drive them back, and then put your clients in those areas. And I like that because because we play a lot of war games, we do enjoy games that they have Euro aspects, but they require you to do a little more combat. Brett Walda was like that. Also from PHALANX a couple of years ago, you had to go out and fight. And in this one, you're going to have to go out and fight.
Yeah, part of this game, it reminded me of the same way that you have to think about a game as something like Dominant Species.
Yes.
The area control aspect of it is very similar, you know, whether you score points with how many guys you got, and it's a lot of put my guys out, try to take your guys off.
Yeah.
You're trying to do that, but you have this also, it's not just a straight competition. You got to survive to the end. So you can't just totally hose everyone, remove everyone's pieces, because then you will die.
Yeah.
And so there's a really great, all that stuff that I liked in games that I enjoyed before we were into like historical wargaming, all of that is here in this game as well. So it checked a lot of those boxes for me of what I enjoy in a game.
Yeah. I think what is different about this and the combat, I don't want to give off the wrong impression, the combat is not necessarily directly player PvP.
No, it's
combat.
You're teaming up
against barbarians. Now, there are cards, law cards, that will do different negative effects to players like whatever, cause you to lose a battle or have to re-roll a die. But then there's also some of those cards in that deck, and we had this conversation earlier about they're not all bad. There's some that's like, oh, you get something and somebody else gets something.
Yeah.
And that ultimately ends up being tough decisions for people, because I feel like when we played Chris, I believe it was, he kind of hosed me over a couple of times in a row. And I thought to myself, don't ask me for help.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to help you. Not because I was mad, but he was doing pretty well. And I'm like, you hose me over. I'm not going to help you. So I started helping other players. Once again, helping other players to help myself.
Yeah,
that's what I was trying to do.
There's an element of table talk in this game. Like, I've got
Yep.
a law card. I can add 2 guys, and I can add one of someone else's. Well, who wants me to add theirs?
Yeah.
You know, oh, if I put yours in here, give me $1. Or if I put yours in here, don't hose me over with something you've got.
There is that negotiation and trading of, you can trade law cards. You can also trade the intrigue tokens, I believe.
And money.
And money. Maybe those
I think
are
it's
the
those 3 things.
But a couple of times, David was the other player with us, and I gave him a couple of intrigue tokens. I believe you did as well, because there was a key roll that he needed to make.
Otherwise, we all would have been
really bad. So that is a very interesting. There's a lot of player interaction in this, and if you like those kind of games, you're going to enjoy that.
But without being overwhelming. I think there are
Right.
some game. I think about something like John Company, where it's like all player
If you
negotiation.
don't do it, you're not going to be able to play the game.
And people don't. Some people, that's not them.
Well, they're averse to that just because they aren't comfortable with that.
Yeah. Whereas this one, there's a little bit of it, and it's just like, hey, I'll give you $1 to not play that card on me that you just revealed.
Yes.
You know, and it's really that simple. And they're like, yeah, sure, fine.
Yeah. But the other thing I really enjoyed about, there were a lot of things I really enjoyed about it. The use of your family cards
Yes.
to basically bid on positioning in these different action phases.
And this is the main engine of the game.
Yeah, that's the main focus.
And it is really, really good.
Well, it's well done because it's symmetric. Everybody has the exact same deck. There is no way to influence that deck, meaning get rid of your 0 card. You always have to have that 0 card.
Sometimes you want that 0.
And sometimes you want it because it gives you a talent and you really need money. But it's symmetric, so everybody has the same amount of cards. You're supposed to discard them in view so that you can kind of see what others have played.
And it's very important.
It is very important because you're in essence doing the bidding with the card to try to overcome and have the highest influence. Sometimes you're okay with maybe the second highest
if you
influence.
want to win.
But if you want to win, you need to be up near the top because the person that bids first on each one of these areas gets the supreme
The best
abilities. You're going to get typically like you can place some clients out on the board and get some money, or
you get first choice of the cards,
which
or
is
first choice of
very
the
important.
buildings.
Choice of those law cards, which are extremely important. Also, the order of battles is very important because in the game, everybody has a main general, their main leader, but you also have an auxiliary general or secondary leader, and only one major general can be in any single battle, but any number of auxiliary generals can be in there. So if you're going first during that console phase, I think it is.
Yeah, you win the console phase, you get 3 money, and you get a reroll.
Yep.
But that every time you win first in a phase with your bids, you go to the back of the play order line.
Yep.
And so when you place out your leaders, you will be last.
Yeah, so you got to be aware of that.
You will probably be putting subordinate leaders in.
And that's why sometimes it's important to, I want to be second in that phase. But it's very cool because the iconography on the cards is tied specifically to what you're trying to do. For instance, the 2, 3, 4, and 5 cards have Legion tokens that you're going to gain. And if you don't play those during this phase, you don't get those legions.
Yeah.
That was something I think we misunderstood from the get-go, and we corrected it quickly. But so during that phase, if you want to get 2 legions, you're going to either play your 2 or your 3 card. And that's typically going to put you in the middle of the pack. And that's what you just got to understand that and plan around it.
But then you can also, it's those extra layers, right? So I know that, hey, you're in a position where you have a lot of guys over here and you want to engage in a battle later on in the turn. So at the beginning of the turn, I know you're probably not going to play your 2 or 3 card because you're going to save that for the console phase because you need the legions. So earlier on in the turn, during like the lore cards or the buildings phases, you're going to the extremes, and I kind of know that. And how much do you gamble on that knowledge and things? There's so many extra layers that get added. The more that you kind of play it.
I thought my favorite part of the family cards was the 1 value card.
Yes.
Very cool because you play, and everybody's playing the card out turned over so you don't see it, and then you're uncovering them simultaneously. But that 1 value card gives you 1 influence in that bidding phase. And then you can survey the board and decide, okay, I'm going to play another card because I really want to go first in this one. So I found using that in certain points of the game was very, very important. But the thing I liked the most was having to keep in mind what you've played, what you want to get done that turn, and ultimately what others, like you said, are trying to do, and you've got to play off that. So this is a game I felt like you've got to be focused. You've got to pay attention.
Yes.
I also thought it was funny, in any area control game, it's very easy for players to, I just put 3 tokens into Umbria and I'm in control there, right? And then they kind of mess around and they don't pay attention and they look at the end of the turn and they're like, oh crap.
One of mine got removed and everyone else put a bunch in.
And it's, so you've got to be aware of that because then that might affect how you play some of these later turns because some of these allow you to add clients. Clients are literally your little cubes.
It's your dudes on the map.
Your dudes on a map. Really liked that. I loved the family phase, loved the bidding. There's also law cards that give you extra influence tokens, I think +1s and +2s, and -1s and -2s, that you can ultimately play in that turn to alter who's going to win. And that was very important. Or using intrigue tokens.
And some of those aspects of the game were a little bit loosey-goosey.
Somewhat. I felt like they needed a little tightening of the rules.
But some of the phases, it's kind of just like, it's up to you. There's no like turn order of who plays their like events and abilities. And so it's like, am I going to be the first one to jump in? Because I really want to do that, but then someone might be able to trump me with more because they've seen what I've done, and how much do I want to recommit to that, or just abandon it. And that was a little bit different because every other game we play is very structured.
Well, it typically is in turn order, right? The first player in that turn decides, are you going to play any extra stuff on your cards?
Yeah, or it's like reverse turn order.
Yeah, or whatever.
But some of the phases
go in that order.
Some phases do have turn order.
Yes,
some of them are just kind of like, do not.
And it was interesting because I remember the first turn, everybody was like, this is, like you said, kind of loosey-goosey. It's like a free-for-all. Everybody can play, but you're all kind of holding back, trying to understand, how should I be doing this? And it was well done, and that was also an intentional choice by the designers to make it that way, because in some of the other phases, it's regimented.
Yes.
This player goes first, this player second, and that's needed in that area. I feel like in the card play, the family card play, having a little bit of that unknown
it's the wheeling and dealing and the backstabbing and trying to get the edge.
And thematically, I think that sets the tone of what is going on here. I always think of the Ides of March and Caesar being stabbed in the back by his friends, and that's what you're doing here.
And
that's ultimately what you're doing.
I just found myself throughout a lot of the game just eyeing everyone's resources.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, who's got a pile of intrigue tokens? Who's got a pile of money? Who's got what cards played? Because then you know how much I need to commit, or how much, or like, is it not even worth it because I'll just get outbid by him? Or do I want to do it anyway to drain his resources? Or if he doesn't commit, then I win it anyway, great. Like there's all of that stuff in there, which I find
and that's what I meant. I think you got to be focused on this game. I don't want to scare someone off that's more of a casual player. I think you can still play the game, but there are so many changes during each phase of the game that you've got to be kind of tuned in, or you're gonna find yourself out of it.
If you want to do well at the game, there's no being on your phone and half playing.
So put that phone down and focus. The other thing I found that was really extremely interesting were those buildings, because they give specific abilities, And some of them are extremely important. I got the one that allowed me every time to put 2 legions into a battle. And, you know, David made a comment to me. He was like, well, I want you to be with me because I know you're going to have
the option to commit that at least.
And if I don't commit it, it just goes to waste.
So you might as well.
Yeah, you might as well, unless you're in 2 different battles. Then you kind of gotta. You could then negotiate.
You can. I don't think you can be.
Well,
there's one building that gives you 2 generals.
Yes, and
so
that's what I meant.
possible,
Yeah. So there was a building up there that allowed you to use both a major general and a minor general. So it's just you got to keep that all in your mind. And I really liked the buildings. I think I was the only one that got the benefits of the building. There were some others, but
that's just it. Though. That you can either go in the benefit spot or you can go in the ownership spot, which gives you victory points.
Yep.
But
and it's a tough choice.
Regardless of which spot you're in, you got to pay taxes at the end of the turn on those buildings. Yeah. So it's also an investment monetarily.
Drain on those resources for sure.
And there's so many little details in this game like that are really cool. Even down to the games phase, whatever that was called, the favor phase, where whatever card you play, that's how much you go up on the favor track.
Adelis, yeah.
And
absolutely.
And so do I save my biggest card for that because I really want to race up that track? Because there's a lot of endgame victory points there, but there's also a lot of taxes you've got to pay for that as well. But you kind of have to commit early and big and often if you want to get to the real end of it.
Yeah.
You really got to play like your 4s and 5s every time on it.
Yeah.
And so is someone committing to that? Can you see that happening early? And then you use that knowledge to then say, well, he's not going to play his 5 here because I know that he's trying to go up on this track.
Right.
There's so much cool stuff like that.
And that game favor track, games track, whatever, I can't remember the specific name.
There's a lot of different naming conventions in the rules that we use.
And because it was a prototype, I think there's going to be some cleanup done. But the track goes up to 16, but you actually get VP based on what position you're in, right? So I think you and David were both the highest on that.
Yes.
So you guys, you didn't share. You each got 8.
Yes, it's
a friendly tie.
Yep.
Yeah. But I think I was in 3rd. I'm like, that's not really worth it. It's 3 victory points. I'd rather focus on something else. So that's why I think I only gained 2 or 3 victory points. And that was okay because it allowed me choice. And I think ultimately that's a part of what this game is about. Yeah. Player choice about how to get where you want to get. And you have several different ways of doing that. And to me, that's a sign of a good game because you could play it multiple times with different strategies and still do well. Ultimately, I think you won.
Yes.
David was second, I was third. Or no, Chris was second, I was third, and David was last. Even though David got 8, which was interesting. But
well, it's because his gamble didn't pay off at the end.
Because he didn't win that one?
I think he did, but we ended up sharing some points here.
Yes, that's true.
But he had considered going over here, where he alone would have scored because no one else was there.
And see, I ended up doing that. I went to Gallia, and I scored all those points because no one else wanted to come with me. And I'm like, that was a good move for me, even though I still finished poorly.
Yeah, but I also liked that, because we looked at the points, and it was like, I don't know if we're going to get there with the points.
Sure.
But I think I ended up with 58 points, and it was a 14-point spread total, which in a game that big, that's pretty decent.
Oh, yeah.
When you play games and it's like, there was a 100-point spread and a 150-point game, it's like, that's
I'm
tough.
not sure that's going to be this way because there is that element of, oh, he's in the lead, I don't want to help him, or I want to hinder him.
And because everyone's scoring lots of points, you're not getting so far behind.
Yep.
It's hard to kind of totally dominate in a game of this style.
Well, and I would also say this. We compared this a lot, mainly in its mechanics, to Dominant Species from GMT games.
And specifically in the area control part of it.
The rest of it,
different.
Very different. But in that game, I have always found one of the most important things to do is make sure you have multiple cubes, 1 or 2 cubes in a lot of different spaces.
It's a spread out game.
Spread out because you're going to get 1 or 2 victory points. And I think when you look at the scores here, Gallia, you might get 4 if you have the most, but if I have 1 less than you, I'm going to get 2, and that's good enough, right?
Or you've committed 4 guys there. I just put 1 in it.
And I got 2 points.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by that player agency, player decisions, and then multiple strategies, because I think you could really try to win this game in many, many different ways.
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll show you how it works so you can get a better gauge of what's going on here, and then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So very briefly, we'll kind of go over some of the way that the game functions in this one. But because this is a prototype, it's going to be subject to changes. Hopefully nothing major because it was really fun. I'm only going to go through so much, especially we played this somewhere else. I've had to kind of reset it up. So, but I'm kind of showing you this side of the board. The board has this whole other side to it where we're going to have our barbarian leaders. And there's also up here this favor track, which has to do with the games, which we'll talk about later on. But we're kind of focusing on here just so we can get it all in camera shot, because this left-hand side of the board is effectively the sequence of play and a significant portion of the notation of what the gameplay is and how it does. So we're going to go through 3 turns. We're going to go down this line 3 times. And we're going to go through and do every single thing. Some of these things are voted on. We're going to execute a lot of different actions. And once we're done with that and we've resolved everything and scored points, we're going to go back up and we're going to do it all over again. And then a 3rd time. And at the end of that, whoever has the most prestige points on this track at the end is going to win. This is one of those games that's going to reward more players. I would not play this with 3 or less, I don't think. This is just because you want more players. It's more fighting and area control and switching up. You get more dynamic out of the game, that's for sure. And you'll see why. So basically, the game sets up where you're 4 different houses, and we've got you in one of these 4 different spaces within Rome, and they have these kind of Roman markers on them to denote that Rome controls them. Everything else doesn't have anything on it. They're barbarian controlled. And we had those 2 leader cards on the side of the board. Those are affiliated with these different tracks. So this is the... it's a Hiero. I don't know how to pronounce that. Sorry. And oh, I've got the wrong leader over here. Here, we'll get the blue one just to say that we did it. So this blue leader is Jagurta, probably also pronounced horribly as well. But basically, they're going to start really close. So we have to do our kind of area control stuff and scoring points how we normally would. But we also have to fight off these barbarian leaders. And we're trying to fight them back almost in kind of a reverse States of Siege style. Because if they ever move into us and then go into Rome, everyone loses the game. It's a failure. The Republic collapses, or the Empire collapses, and everyone loses. However, if we survive the 3 turns, without that happening, the person with the most prestige wins amongst those players and is crowned emperor, basically. So, not only are we doing an area control game, dudes on a map, we're also moving out to try and fight these guys, because if we don't fight them and we don't exhaust them, they will move up, and that's very bad. We don't want to do that. So just know these guys start really close in and threatening, and you have to fight them back over the course of the game. And more will come out, and it's a really fun kind of exercise of beating back the fires and also trying to take control of what you have. Really enjoyable. So that's kind of this main core setup. There's these spaces up here for buildings which can be built during this. Let's see, the Censo phase, the construction phase. There starts one out, I believe, with setup, and we've got a forum that's drawn randomly. There's a whole bunch in the game. But the general course of gameplay is that for each of these kind of sections or phases, there you go, we use the word phases, we are going to use our deck of player family cards, which are identical for all the players. They have values 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to use those to bid on where we would like to go in the placement of these rewards. Part of the reason you also want to play this with lots of players is more players, more rewards kind of a thing. So if the person who has the highest value is going to get this cool thing up here. The next highest value is going to get this one. The 3rd player is going to get this. And if you have a 4th or a 5th player, they don't get anything, and it sucks for them. So that's kind of the way that it goes. And so you have a fixed hand. Everyone has an identical hand with identical little abilities down here, which we'll talk about in a second. And so there's a lot of that gaminess of, you know, action selection, when to play, what do you value, what does someone else value, trying to guess, and then saying, okay, I'm less concerned about this one, so I'll tank on that one, so I can save my good cards for this stuff later on, right? You can't win everything, it's not physically possible, and, you know, that's just what you have to expect out of the game. So all the players who are going to go and do this, effectively what you're going to do is you're going to all bid, and this first section is you get to draw a lore card, either one of the 3 face-up ones. I don't have any out just because I can't fit everything on the camera shot. But there's this deck of lore cards, and these are one-time cards that you just hold in your hand and play, and they will break a rule or allow you to do something, place extra guys, gain some money, add some extra power. A lot of it, though, is like screw someone else over, remove their guys, or hurt them in combat, or, you know, you can save yourself in a combat, things like that. There's 3 of them that are out available, and then there's just a deck of the rest of them. And so this first player gets to pick, they get first pick of these, or they can draw off the top. On top of that, they can also place one of their cubes out onto the board. When you place a cube, either where you have someone or adjacent to where you have someone. That's very important. So that's one of those things that you're kind of looking for if you want to go first. If you want to go second, because you don't care necessarily about having first choice of these, great, you will play maybe a middle number or a slightly lower number. The third player gets third choice of these, or again, you draw off the top and then you place one. So in this section, going highs just gives you first choice of these cards. If there's a card that will greatly enhance what you're doing on the board, or might save you if you can see there's a really strong enemy barbarian that you are going to have to lead a battle against, maybe you want that. Maybe you need to get that extra kind of boost. But that's what's going to happen with those. But then you get to the sensor phase, and the sensor phase is similar in its concept. However, it's to do with the buildings. So there's a big deck of kind of buildings, and what you're going to do is you get first choice of the buildings. So there's a little market of 3 buildings out of the 7 or 8 that are in the game. These are the ones that are available. You get first choice of which one to put out. And each of these has a different bonus on them. So this one gives you a coin for every cube in a Roman-controlled area. It's very, very powerful for gaining income, so you don't have to worry about that. This one is put a cube anywhere in Roman-controlled territory. And this one, I do not know what it does. We never got this one out, or we never used it. So I'll have to check that in the rules. But you get first pick. If there's one of these that you really want to have out, or the ability for, you get first choice of that. You also get to place a guy out onto the board. You also get 1 coin as well, which is nice. Always nice to have some coin. You need some coin at the end of each round, typically. The second player is going to get second choice of whatever 2 buildings are left, and place 1 guy, so they lose out on the coin. And the last guy doesn't get to do anything with the buildings, but they just place someone out on the board. And placing guys on the board is very, very, very important. Once we're done with that, we're going to move on to the console phase, and the first player is going to get 3, what they call them in this one, whatever, gold, we're going to call it. But they also get to put one of their cubes in this space, and that gives them a re-roll in combat later on, which is very nice. Second player is going to get 2 coin. Third player is going to get 1 coin. You don't have this one if there's not a 5th player. After we've done this section, then we resolve all the combats. So hopefully, you have been putting guys onto the board, and we will have put, you know, all of these spaces where we could put guys out. Well, we want to expand, so we've been putting some guys into here. So let's say red and yellow both put guys there because they want to go and fight a combat. Well, we're going to resolve combats based on turn order, which I don't have out, but turn order is random at the beginning of the game. Every time you win first place, you go to the back of the turn order. And that's really important because you get the cool bonuses, but you go to the back of the turn order. That's very important in this battle phase because it will be done in reverse, like in this order. So if you just won, you're going to go last for battles and assigning leaders. Why is that important? Well, what's going to happen is if yellow goes before red, when yellow puts out their leader, their expedition is going to have their like strong leader, and they're going to put out some dudes, but the red player can't put out their strong leader. They have to put out their minor leader to help, just as like a support. That's important because the major leader is going to get prestige, or they're going to get more prestige from defeating this guy. They're going to get coin from defeating this guy, and they do not have to share that coin, and they get to choose to do rerolls and things. They get to choose certain different abilities that might or might not go off based on some card play and different rerolls and things like that. So how and what you place can be very important. You could also, yellow goes first and doesn't put many guys out, and that kind of forces red's hand to have to commit a lot, and maybe to drain their coffers a little bit. You want to be careful with kind of how much you screw over players, but you could do that and tighten the screws a little bit just so they don't run away with something. So turn order is very important in that instance. Once everyone's put all their guys out, you're going to then basically resolve combat. When you put your dudes on the board, you also get a free amount of legions based on the leader that you played. So let's say the red leader had put out this card. He comes along with 2 free legions. So that's 2 combat power. And yellow played a high number because he wanted to go first. Let's say he had played this guy. So he's higher in the turn order. That's not really how it works, but he comes with 1 guy. Just what's that? Let's say, well, it's printed on there. So currently, they've got their little 3 combat strength that they're going to add to a die roll, and these will obviously be much nicer. 1, 1, 2, 1. There's 3 1s and 1 2, and a couple blanks. So you're going to add it to that. The opponent has a combat strength of this number of shields, which is 3, plus the number of shields in Sicily, which is 1. So they have a 4, and they will also add a die roll. So currently we're not in like a great spot, honestly, but early in the game, you will have a couple of legions up on this track at the very top. Let's see, we can't really see that. Let me pull this down. Now there's a couple of these like auxiliary legions or auxiliaries that you can get. There's 2 available at the beginning. Normally this track is all covered with these red markers, which you place out when you expand your territories. And then as you expand your territories, you have more auxiliaries available. Makes sense, right? You can pay 2 gold to get one of these guys to join you. Very, very expensive, but you can do it. You might also have different cards that you want to play from this lore deck. And typically you're looking at some of these battle cards which have the red stripe on them. During battle, do not roll enemy battle die. Great. So let's say one of us has that. Great. One of us plays that. So we're currently at 4 to 4. We're going to roll a die. I rolled a blank, of course. We don't roll one for the enemy. And I'm almost 100% positive in this game that you win if you are equal to or you tie. But I do not remember. But either way, you will resolve the combat results. So, if you defeat them, the main leader with the kind of big leader token, they're going to get 2 prestige. The support leader is going to get 1 prestige. Still some prestige, but it's not as good. And some of these are very, like, it's a 4 and a 2, like they can make a big difference. But the main leader is also going to get 2 gold. So 2 gold, that's great. That helps us. But you also can give this spoils out. If you want to be magnanimous, kind of, you can give any amount of this spoils to the supporting leader. For each one that you give, you gain a prestige for being magnanimous. It's great. Really love that mechanic because it gives you a choice. If you don't need the money because you got a ton, great. I'll give it away, I'll get some victory points, awesome. Or if I desperately need to raise the money for taxes later on, I'm going to keep the spoils. Screw you. And then you keep this is a tiebreaker, whoever defeated the most barbarians at the end, if the points are a tie. But that's simple. This gets removed from the board. When that gets removed from the board because we defeated them, this becomes Roman controlled. And based on the difference in the die rolls, we might keep a certain number of guys here and they become garrison units, which we can pull from later to do different combats. So if you can win big, you can leave a lot of units out on the board, which makes it cheaper to get them, or you can use some special cards to kind of move them into a different space and use them later in different combats. So generally speaking, this is great. We control this because at the end of the round, after we do some of this other stuff, we're going to be able to score these points. When normally we were just scoring these points, 2 and 1, 2 and 1 for whoever's got the most and the second most in that space. Well, now we're going to do 3 and 1. But you'll also be fighting combats against this guy as well. And you might also just be placing guys into these ones to take them over. And when you do that, you're going to then score all these points. The points grow and grow. Sometimes they're taken away as successful barbarians will kind of keep moving forward. That's not great, but that's awesome. This province now also, because it is a Roman-controlled province outside of Italia, will provide income to the players who are there. So that's, you can't levy any more taxes from Italia than you already do, which is kind of not calculated into the game. But all the provinces outside, if they become Roman controlled, you can levy taxes against them and score from them. So they're very, 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 very strong. So you want to do that as much as you can without losing the game, basically. But that's combat. There's some bits and pieces to it, not that complicated. Then we're going to go to the Praetor phase. Again, we're back to playing our little cards. And the Praetor only has one section to it. Only the first player is going to win this. And when they win it, they are going to remove someone else's cube from the board, and they're going to place one of their own. So this is where, hey, we just did this. Thanks for your help, Mr. Red player. But if yellow player plays their strongest card and wins this, I'm going to boot you out. I'm going to put myself in. So now I'm going to get the 3 points, and the 1 point goes to waste. You don't get that. And then you don't have a guy in there to get money from taxes later. Woohoo! Yeah, it's a jerk move, but this is a jerk game, if we're honest with ourselves. As kind of compensation for that, whoever's piece is removed gains an intrigue marker. That's what this tiny little grey symbol is. And the intrigue markers we haven't really talked about, but the intrigue markers, you get one of these every time you are last in a round and don't get to take any action. And intrigue markers, you can spend 2 of them to either give yourself positive modifiers to your family cards that you play, or you can use them to get 2 of them to get a reroll in a combat. You can reroll 1 of the 2 dice. So there's also a variant where you can think that totally changes them, but that's the core game, things that you can do with those. So you don't get totally hosed, and everyone who doesn't get to go on this, so 1 player out of the 4 or 5 will get this. Everyone else gets an intrigue. The person whose piece is removed effectively just gets 2 intrigue. So they can immediately kind of utilize that to do something else. And finally, we have this kind of the games. They've got different names on here, but it references the games track, which is up on this other side of the board, which we'll take a look at here in just a second. First player gets to place a guy on the board, and the second and third players can place a guy, but they cannot put them into buildings. They can only put them in Roman-controlled territories on the board. That's what that symbol means. So what we'll have a quick look at is this little favor track up here for the games. Hopefully we can see this. You will each have a marker on here. Whoever has the highest points gets 8 prestige at the very end of the game. This only scores, this is endgame victory points. Whoever has the least will get 1 or 2, depending on how many players you got. However, for however far up on the track you are, this is how much money you have to put in to support the games. So the more points you have, the more expensive it is to maintain, so you want to make that final push to that last, so you only have to pay the 4 gold in the very last round. You can't be racing up there. But you go up on that track, the amount equal to the value of the card that you played. So what you're going to do is you might say, I'm going to play my 1 card, but the 1 card has this symbol on that allows you, after cards have been revealed, to play another one. So if you've saved some of your biggest cards, you can go up 6 spots if that's what you want to prioritize. But again, that's your priority. You did not play your 5 card elsewhere or your 6 to kind of trump someone out. So that's something that you have to or want to commit to. At which point, at the end of the round, we're going to score prestige for all of these territories. Again, the large number for the first player, second number for the second most. The further out you get, these are more difficult to get to, but 3 players are going to score, and these are worth a lot more points. So the further out you get, the more fighting there is over those areas as well. It gets very, very cutthroat. Or if you can launch an expedition and do it on your own, and only you score those 5 points, woo, that can be a big swing. And basically, you're going to reset everything, pay your taxes for guys in buildings, because you can put guys in buildings to gain the token that matches their ability, and you can just proc that during your turn once and you get it back again. Or you can sit them in here. They don't do anything on this side, but they give you 2 prestige, which is a lot. Over the course of a game, if you've got 3 or 4 guys in there, you can get 2 per round. It could get very, very expensive because you have to pay for those taxes, and those taxes increase in the buildings. But it can garner a lot of victory points if that's what you want to do. But you're then going to reset and you're going to go again. Eventually this board will be full of colored pieces and it's all sorts of mess. Think dominant species, and it's wonderful. But that's kind of the core of how the game works. Hopefully that was a little bit helpful. But again, once we get a full finished copy of this, we'll be able to explain that a bit better. But I just want to zoom in a tiny bit on the board just so that you can see the detail of the artwork on this with that mosaic style is absolutely stunning. Playing with the board and just staring at it, it was staggering. I really, really appreciated that. This is a board that is great to play on. So that's just an extra bonus that you get with this game, but what we'll do is we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the game. A stunning map, by the way.
Well, the production on this one, and once again, keep in mind this is a prototype.
Yes.
The board was an utter piece of art.
This might be one of my favorite kind of Euro game boards out there. Honestly.
It's got this mosaic kind of look and feel, obviously very Roman.
Without being like
gaudy or...
you could make this and it'd be kind of hard to look at.
Yep.
But the color palette is such that it is stunning to look. I just found myself like staring at the details on the board.
So, some of these, like the Alps up here, it's like really, really cool.
Yeah, and just like the different like wonders and stuff.
Yep.
It's just, it's great
Very
to
well
play
done.
with. That's for sure.
I think it's even better when you can see all the pieces on the board.
Yeah.
You know, when you can see the 5 different purple, yellow, red, green all on the board, it really is very, very, it pops. It really does pop.
Yeah, I loved the structure of the turn and, you know, the different phases and the way that they're ordered. The fixed hand and the bidding is something that I really like in games.
Yeah.
I think about a game that's not out, Peace 1905, exactly the same, where it has you have 12 cards and it is fixed, and you will play them, and I know what you've played. We played a few games with that in it, and I just like that as a mechanic because it's a level playing field until you start playing.
Yeah.
And you get into the I'm gonna maybe like bluff, and so people go all in on something or not, and how much do I want to commit to things? I really like that decision space to work in within this style of game, and it was sublime in this one as well.
And it was really easy, right?
Yes,
you have 6 cards. It's not like you have 30 different cards to choose from.
That definitely helps.
But it was simple. I thought they were very well laid out graphically, very clear. I thought the symbology was very clear, but it helped us to really get into the game and the gameplay, because everything else was done really well. I agree with you. I loved the different phases and how, we didn't point this out, but someone always gets screwed, right?
Oh, yeah.
Someone always gets left out, whether you're playing...
I think regardless of player count.
3, 4, or 5 players, somebody's going to get left out, and they're ultimately, I think the consolation prize is typically an intrigue marker.
Which doesn't sound like much, but once you have 3 or 4 of those, they're
very powerful.
I can do some stuff with it.
So you do not get the great benefits, but getting that intrigue card really can make a difference, and ultimately that will set you up for some future victory down here in one of the later phases, unless you played your 5 card and everybody beat you because they had a bunch of other stuff, right?
Yes.
So I enjoyed that aspect, you know, because it made the bidding important.
Yes.
It made it a part of the game that I had to really plan and think about strategically to make sure I got done that turn what I wanted.
And I think the other thing that I appreciated about this design is that the combat was simple.
Yeah.
Right? They've got a number of shields. I have to get, a certain number, and it's like my legions, a die roll, and whatever else I committed to it.
Yeah. Cards or...
And they have their shields and a die roll. But I think like some games like this, it's easy to get into like a combat mechanic that might be a little bit more complicated and kind of slows it down a bit, and it's like a bit more effort. Here, they keep it streamlined so that when you get to the combat phase, you just do it, and you move on.
And the combat is a part of the game. It's not necessarily the main focus of the game. And I think that's why they kept it simple, and I think that was well done.
But it's very important, right?
Oh, it's very important.
You can score a lot of prestige from defeating those. You can get coin.
Yep.
You can choose to be magnanimous as the main leader and give the coin away
to get
more
victory
prestige.
points.
That was one of my favorite mechanics.
Oh, it was awesome.
Anytime you can give away resources to gain victory points, I don't know if we've played many games that do that.
No, not a lot.
I loved that.
Oh,
I thought that was such a cool
and it
thing.
was one of those things that the person had no choice. If the main general won and they offered you a coin,
you had to take it.
You had to take it.
And they get a point for being gracious.
And you'd be like, well, why wouldn't I take it? Well, because he's going to get a victory point.
Yeah.
But you might really need that coin. And sometimes having those extra coin
and some of those
very important.
Give a lot of money.
They do.
And you can give it all away and get a lot of points. I think some of them have 3 on them.
Yeah, I think most of them had... It was 1, 2, or 3.
But imagine you get 4 points and you get the 3 gold. You give the 3 gold away.
7 points.
This was a 7-point battle out of here. And,
crazy.
And that's massive.
Yeah.
I really liked that little... And it's the little nuances like that that really made this game stand out to me as a extremely well-rounded game. And not just kind of another dudes on a map game.
Yeah.
The details in this were really, really enjoyable.
I think the final comment I have, a game like this, a historically set board game, to me are always great wonders, right? It's how are they going to do it? How are they going to try to capture the history, put it into the game to make it so it's not just a pasted on theme. We've had those discussions about other games. Oh, that's just pasted on.
Yeah.
This could be anything. But as I mentioned earlier, I really felt like the intrigue and the way the bidding worked, it really, to me, highlighted the way I'm sure these powerful families had to interact with each other. And I could feel that, and I could feel the tightness of the resources, particularly in regards to taxes. You had to sit there and be like, okay, I need 6 coins this turn, or I'm going to have to lose one of my buildings. Or I think if you can't pay your tax, you have to get rid of guys. I think it was on the board, or move your favor back.
If you can't pay the guys in the buildings, you've got to take them off, and then you move your track down if you can't pay those taxes.
That can be devastating because you've worked hard to get those.
Yeah, you paid a 5 or 6 card. You're like, I don't have any money.
I don't know, but to me, they thematically integrated a lot of that stuff, and then just the way the game looks. Having those SPQR markers, the Roman markers that you put out on the territory, those were just, the eagle was amazing. Really looked great thematically. I love the art style on this one too.
Yeah, it's the simple details like the more territories you take over, the more auxiliaries you have available.
Yeah, because you can press them into service.
That's a great little piece of the theme and the history without being overbearing. The barbarians, not overly complex, but it's things like that put the theme there without it getting bogged down in minutia.
Yeah.
But also, we played a lot of these kind of ancient Mediterranean games, and it's like I'm the green faction.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way in this. Like the broader Roman Empire theme, I did think was pretty cool in this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well done. I would recommend this game to anyone that enjoys those historical type of games with some bidding, with a little bit of combat, with a little bit of take that, but not too much, and some really tough decision points that are very, very important to the game.
And I think once you played this a couple of times, 2 hours?
2 hours, yeah.
Maybe just over, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think we played it in 3 because we were learning the rules, and it's
right.
We've got printed PDFs, so it's lots of flipping.
Yeah.
But you won't have that. But yeah, once you've got it down, we were blowing through a lot of this stuff.
Well, and I actually thought the rules were laid out very well. I taught the game, which is kind of rare for us, and I was able to grok it enough that I could typically use the very well done player aids.
Yeah, the player aids were
although,
decent.
as we mentioned earlier, being a prototype, some of the language didn't always come together, but you
Yes.
could figure it out.
Yes.
But that made the game easier to teach. I had a lot of stress about this because I wanted this game to really go off well so that we would enjoy it and understand it. And I thought I was able to teach that. And,
Yes.
and that was just reading through the rules once. And then I did set a game up and move some pieces around, did some things wrong, but then corrected those. And I thought generally we got everything right with the exception of the one thing from the very beginning that we then corrected immediately.
But yeah, it's also one of those games that it has a very regimented structure to it.
Yeah.
You do this phase, and you just kind of go line by line,
down,
and you do it.
then you go here,
and
then
then
you
we
go
go to the
here.
next phase. You luckily, so you can kind of, as you teach yourself, just go through the phases and read it that way.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the games, it's like, I gotta learn everything, because everything happens at once. You can take it in a bite-sized way as you learn
Yeah.
this. Wasn't mega complicated.
And I think basically the phases started being described like on page 20, I think it was. So you would turn there and then follow it down.
Yeah.
And that worked really well.
But yeah, Triumph from PHALANX. Check this out. You're probably already interested because you're probably on the page. But if you're not, go to Kickstarter. This is going to be. This was really good.
Yeah.
And this will be, I think, have some staying power in our collection.
Yes.
So yes, thank you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander for theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.